Boom, 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 boom. A side, B side. What side are you on?
Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I sure would like to make a podcast. I've got so much to say about blank. Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, you really should. It is the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. All right, I'm going to tell you why it's so easy. Okay, so with Anchor, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And you can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Trust me, I'm so excited about this. You can be too. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. All right. Oh, welcome back. It is A Side B Side Podcast. I'm Brooke Summers. That is, who are you?
I'm Adam Weingarten.
What? You said it with such pause, like, but am I?
But am I? Well, I wasn't sure. That I was like, how do I say this cool? And I was like, just use words. And then everything came out and it was not cool. But I did use words.
All right.
So here's what I was thinking. So like my ancestor, and yeah, I'm sorry, we're going on a tangent. My ancestor who decided to call our family Weingardens, his name was Conrad. And he introduced himself as Conrad of the Weingarten. Mm-hmm. So I was going to say that. And then I was like, but I don't have a Weingarten. And
but
that's why like that. There was
you could have lied.
But there was an audible like air brakes that happened because I was going to say, I'm Adam of the Weingarten. And I'm like, also of the Tool, because that sounds ridiculous. So don't say that out loud.
And yet here we are.
And here we are. And now we got like a bunch of background on my family and how I don't know how to say my own name because I feel like a tool. Welcome back to the A Side B Side Podcast. Back. That's it in a nutshell.
This week was fairly uneventful and it was amazing.
Like, I mean, that's good though.
I know, like there was no like crazy tweets at 3 a.m. There was no rants. There was no there was nothing. That's what we all did this week. I did finally finish my show Imposters. It's only 2 seasons. Adam, I really think you would enjoy it. You should check it out.
I'm sure I would. There's so many shows I need to watch. It's just this stupid having to work thing.
I know. It gets in the way of...
It really does.
The viewing of the TV shows. Euphoria came out with a part 2 of their like mid-season... I don't know how many parts it's going to be. I don't know if it's just going to be 2, but they came out with part 2. The first one was like right around Christmas. And it was, if you have watched Euphoria, the first part was Rue. The second part is Jules. If you have not watched Euphoria, you absolutely need to get on HBO Max and watch Euphoria. It is an amazing show.
I'm just going to add this to the long list of things I have not watched that I should watch.
Zendaya. Okay. So she started off on Disney Channel. And of course, you know, Disney Channel stars usually kind of fizzle out. Zendaya is so phenomenal as an actress. Like, and this role, she plays a recovering drug addict, and she will blow you away. She deserved the Emmy that she won this past year because she really, really does. She knocks it out of the park.
I've heard very good things, and it's one of those things that as a parent I need to watch because it's being referenced by my teenagers, which means that I am already behind on the learning curve.
Let's see, what else is there? Oh, so at the very beginning of the pandemic, Love is Blind came out, so I'm watching that again, and it's fun watching it now that I know exactly what happens, and then like just rewatching it, and there's like things that I had forgotten happened, and just seeing how it progresses, even though I know the outcome. It's fun.
Yeah, I watched it at the beginning of back in the pandemic, part 1 or shutdown part
Uno?
1. I don't know.
Right.
Uno. Back like March, April, when we were like, this is only going to be 2 weeks. Let's all just watch Netflix.
Right.
And I just talking to you about it again, like I had forgotten about so many characters. Like there were ones that I remembered, but like you mentioned Gianna. who I had completely mentally deleted.
Giannina, yeah.
Giannina. Yeah. See, I didn't even say her name right because I am bad at names, but I had completely forgot about that relationship. And that was like, it was going so well that suddenly it wasn't. And then they both just there was a lot there. And I completely deleted it. And then the one lady who I still believe was just on there to try to get her own HGTV show, the Jessica lady. Yeah. Where
Lets
she
her
did poor Mark.
dog drink her wine.
Well, I mean, hey, dog's got to drink. Too, so.
Look, I'll give you your own glass. Like, look, Benny, you want some wine? I will give you your own glass. You're not drinking out of mine.
That's fair. That's fair. Who knows where that tongue's went?
So this week, really all I have to talk about is like shows. I have not finished Night Stalker. I am in the process of watching Night Stalker, and I do want to get that finished this week. So I'll be able to tell you about that next week.
Have you been watching WandaVision?
No, is it good? I don't know. I don't know. Is it good?
I mean, the first 2 episodes, I was like, nah, I'm not really sure where we're going here. And then, like, literally right before this, I finished the 3rd episode, which I had been encouraged to do, to keep watching, to give it more of a chance by a very good friend of mine. And it got good real quick. And now I want to go back and watch the first 2 episodes and see like stuff that I've missed. I feel like it's one of those shows where you watch it the first time and then you want to watch it a second time to really catch all the stuff you thought you saw, but you didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
And by the 3rd episode, I'm hooked now. Now I'm waiting for like the new one that's going to come out on the same day that our podcast airs on Friday. Because I really have no idea where they're going to go with it, but I'm more hooked than I was for the first 2 episodes.
Okay, well then I'll give it
So I think,
chance.
yeah, I think now the 3rd episode is out. I would highly recommend it. The first 2, I was like, okay, this is cute, but I don't know what we're doing. But it makes a lot more sense now.
Okay, all right.
But actually makes less sense.
The previews just make it look really kind of cheesy. I mean, and maybe that's the point, that they were trying to throw you off or whatever. But
yeah, no, and that was my full feeling from the first 2. I'm like, okay, this is just like homage to old school television. Like, what's going on? Like, this is cute, but like, what's really going on here? But as it's evolved, I think it's one of those shows that like if you watch the entire run, you're gonna enjoy it more than trying to watch it episode by episode.
Right.
So I'm like tempted to like wait a couple weeks and then watch 2-3 episodes in a row, because I think that will be more enjoyable. Because right now it's like they're not giving you a lot. But I feel like if I go back and I watch those first 2 episodes, I'm going to see more hints about things that I didn't see before. And that's kind of brilliant. But I think that's where Marvel gets the opportunity to do that now, because it's a series.
Mm-hmm.
So they can kind of slow roll you. Whereas in the movies, you know, even if it's going to be 3 hours long, we're going to need some stuff pretty quick here, folks. Like,
yeah,
let us know who the bad guy is, what we're doing, who we get a punch. And this has definitely been a little bit more of a slow roll. So it's new for Marvel, but maybe that's good.
Okay. All right. The only other thing that happened this past weekend was my birthday. I am officially 24.
Congratulations. I mean, you're so close to getting your car insurance to go down. So,
and to being able to rent a car.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, big things to look forward to next year.
I know. I'm excited. Okay, so before we get into it, this week, Adam, I'm going to do something I've never done before, but there was just so much information on this person that I just felt like it wasn't going to fit in one episode.
Ooh.
So we're going to have our first 2-parter.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I can just carry that anxiety for an entire week with me. It'll be fun.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes, psychiatry.
All right. So are you ready to jump on into the B-side?
I was, until you told me it was going to be a 2-parter. So I'm going to need like at least 10 minutes to prepare myself.
All right. I'll let you go breathe.
Yeah. Deep breaths. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, so Adam, I know these stories can get to you. So this is your warning.
Yeah.
This is probably our most brutal story and most brutal killer to date.
All right.
Okay. So this all came about when I discovered that a wrestler took inspiration for his name from this guy. So I had to look him up, and we'll get back to that later. I'm not gonna give you who that is just yet.
Bang. Just like starting off right at the top of the mountain.
So this is the story of Richard Leonard Kuklinski. Now, I'm probably going to get it backwards because it's not an expression it's not like our expression. But do you remember a few weeks ago, Ella told us the expression about they're so cold, they won't melt butter. Remember that one?
Yeah, that won't melt butter.
This one is so cold he'd probably freeze it.
And frozen butter's not good. Like frozen, there's a lot of things that are good, but that is the worst scientific form of butter.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
So Richard Leonard Kuklinski was born April 11th, 1935. Richard the Iceman was born in his family's 4th Street, Jersey City, New Jersey apartment to Stanislaw Stanley Kuklinski, a Polish immigrant from Karwacz, Manosovian Voivodeship. Whew, I practiced that one.
Sounded like it.
Stanley worked as a brakeman on the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad, and Anna McNally from Harrismus, which is a neighborhood within Jersey City. Anna was the daughter of Catholic Irish immigrants from Dublin, Ireland, that is, Ireland. And
not Ohio.
Not Ohio, right. And during Richard's childhood, she worked in a meat packing plant. Richard was the second of 4 children. So Stanislav, aka Stanley, was violent. He was an alcoholic and he was extremely violent, and he seemed to beat his children on a regular basis. Sometimes he would even beat Anna. According to the book, The Iceman, The True Story of a Cold-Blooded Killer by Anthony Bruno, Stanley left the family when Richard was just a small child, but he would return now and then. When he did return, he was usually drunk, almost always. And sadly for Richard, his returns usually meant more beatings. It wasn't just Stanley that Richard had to be weary of. Anna, his mom, was also abusive. Anna would often beat Richard with a broom handle, hitting him so hard that sometimes she would break the handle on his body. She would also use other household objects. These aren't the days of getting popped with a slipper by your mama, okay?
No,
this is serious business.
Also, they're going through a lot of brooms.
Right? Did they have stock? Did they
I don't know. Like, I feel like that's an important household item that, like, you don't want to break.
Like, you go to the hardware store and they're like, Anna, another broom? Really?
Yeah. Like, how much sweeping are you doing?
So, in an interview on HBO in 1992, in the documentary The Iceman Tapes, Conversations with a Killer, Richard actually recalled one incident during his preteen years when Anna tried to kill his dad, Stanley, with a kitchen knife. Anna was extremely religious and she believed in stern discipline. And she also believed in strict religious upbringings, which is how she was raised. Richard was raised in the Roman Catholic Church and he even became an altar boy. So you think, okay, maybe things are going to look. No, they're not looking up.
I mean, to be fair, like the application is not high for altar boys. Oh, you appear to be a boy who wants to stand by the altar? You're in.
So later on, he rejected the Catholic faith. He also was not a fan of his mom. He called her a cancer who destroyed everything she touched. Richard also expressed regret in his life. Not for what you would think. His regret, not killing his father, Stanley.
Okay.
So we've discussed before with serial killers, one sign to watch for is how they treat animals.
Yeah.
Richard was exceedingly cruel as a young boy. He killed neighborhood cats, by tying their tails together with rope, and then he would throw that rope over a clothesline and watch as the cats viciously fought each other.
Who even thinks of that as an option?
Right. Sometimes he would throw live cats into basement incinerators, and then he would watch them through the glass window as the fire consumed them. This is not an okay person.
No, and also there are a lot of cats in Jersey City, evidently.
Not after Richard.
Well, that's fair.
So
there were a lot of cats.
There were, yeah. Cats weren't his only animal victims, though. He would torture stray dogs while fantasizing about killing Stanley Stanislav Kuklinski. So Richard was the second oldest. His older brother, Florian, died at the age of 7 due to injuries that were inflicted upon him by Stanley during a violent beating.
That would be murder then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Richard was 5 years old. And in the book, The Iceman Confessions of a Mafia Contract Killer by Phillip Carlo, the family lied to police about Florian's injuries, saying that he had fallen down the stairs accidentally. Anna, his mom, had actually told Richard that Florian had been hit by a car. So shortly after Florian's death, when Stanley left the family, he left behind Anna, Richard's younger siblings, Roberta and Joseph. Joseph, like his older brother and father, was a despicable person. Joseph raped 12-year-old Pamela Dial. Okay, I'm going to say content warning here because Joseph is a disgusting person and Richard tops him by miles. So Joseph raped 12-year-old Pamela Dial, and then he threw her off a 5-story building along with her dog to her death. Pamela's body, her small, frail body, was found near her dog, who was alive and was barking. He had a broken paw. And because of him, they were able to find Pamela. Pamela had left her home to search for her dog. When asked about his brother's crimes in the HBO interview in 2001, he stated, "We came from the same father." Richard actually cut off his brother after this. He said that it was because he had daughters at the time. And when you find out more about Richard, you're going to be like, and you cut him off? Okay. Mm-hmm. Richard left school after the 8th grade, and he took up odd jobs, many of them illegal, like many people do if they leave school early, you know. I shouldn't say many, like some people do. I don't want to say many. He took up bootlegging adult films, which was one of his ventures, and he became connected to organized crime through this. And we're going to get to that in just a second. So one might think that such a violent man would have no inclination to have a family of his own, but think again. So according to Philip Carlo's book, Richard grew into a very tall, like over 6 foot, handsome young man. He had light blonde hair, light honey eyes. He looked kind of like Jimmy Stewart, and he had like this sly, charming way that attracted women to him, especially older women. One of those women was 25-year-old Linda. Richard was 16 at the time that they met in 1951. So she was 9 years his senior. Mm-hmm. He began living with her almost immediately. Around the spring of 1954, Linda got pregnant. So Richard would have been about 19 at this time. And he was deeply entrenched by now in his criminal lifestyle, and he was growing increasingly more brutal. When Richard learned of Linda's pregnancy, he wasn't excited. Now, Adam, you remember when you found out that you were having kids, both times you were ecstatic, right?
Yeah, also shocked both times, but
yeah,
very ecstatic, very happy.
That was not Richard at all. He actually didn't want Linda to have his children. He really didn't like Linda that much. He was just kind of, she was a placeholder, if you will.
Well, like he got a place to live, so I mean, she was a sugar mama.
A body warmer, you know?
Yeah.
He was just a
His
warm
scarf.
body that she, he used when he wanted and then he walked away from. So he told her to get an abortion. She refused because she didn't believe in it. He threatened her. She still refused. So he beat her. But this wasn't anything new.
Mm-hmm.
This was normal for him. Richard seemed to always be annoyed with Linda, which I guess would be easy to do if you don't really like a person. You're just kind of using them.
Right.
She wanted to get married. Of course, he didn't. He wouldn't even come home sometimes at night. So again, he threatens her. She still doesn't get the abortion. He beats her. And he was hoping to force a miscarriage. So he punched her in the stomach. It didn't work. But just as cruel as Richard could be, she said he could be equally as sweet and kind. He would bring Linda cute stuffed toys, freshly cut flowers, fancy candy, clothes. I mean, sounds kind of like your typical abuser. You bring
Yeah, I
the
was gonna say that.
sweets to soothe over the horrific abuse.
Yeah. Oh, that'll never happen again. I'm so sorry.
Sadly, though, he never said that. He just brought her this stuff. Or maybe I say sadly, but she, not that it makes it okay. It doesn't. It doesn't make it good.
No.
But I guess he was always upfront with her. Not that it makes it okay, because it doesn't. Because he's a pile of fly-infested garbage. But anyway, I wanted to say something else so bad.
Right, but Mama's listening, so we aren't going to do that. I don't want to get the feedback that Adam had a mouth this week.
So Linda never really knew who was going to be walking through the door when he came in. She finally got her request, and she and Richard married at City Hall. Linda gave birth to a bouncing baby boy, Richard Jr., alone, because Richard didn't feel the need to go to the hospital, nor did he help bring Linda and the baby home. He just did not care.
Just off doing his thing.
Richard Jr. was the byproduct of sex, not love, in Richard's eyes. Not long after Richard Jr., another byproduct of sex was produced, another baby boy named David. Richard still didn't really have any real concerns for his boys, but he didn't care for them emotionally, but they were his, which meant he was protective over them because they were his property. So an example of that, one time, Linda was living in low-income housing in a complex with the boys where a superintendent had set his eyes on her, even though she repeatedly ignored his advances. Mind you, Richard wasn't really living with her at this time, or he would come and go as he pleased.
Right.
The superintendent became really aggressive with Linda, but she persisted in, rebuffing his flirtations and his advances. So he finally crossed the line and he slapped one of the boys. He stated they were too noisy. Don't you put your hands on my children.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Linda finally did what she'd been avoiding. She told Richard, because at this point it's like, all right, now he's got the boys involved. Something's got to happen. Richard basically stalked this man at a bar. He hit him so hard that he literally knocked him across the room, and then he beat him senseless. The bartender was a moonlighting police officer, stopped Richard as he attempted to leave the bar, asking Richard for his ID. Richard responded by hitting him with a roundhouse kick that knocked him out. The police officer.
So wait, a roundup? Like, was Richard secretly a ninja?
Your guess is as good as mine, but that's a big old boy and a big old foot to be roundhouse kicking somebody.
I'm just saying, like, roundhouse, like, I pretended to be a ninja when I was a kid. Those things are not easy to do. Like, I saw a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. I still couldn't figure it out. I feel like he had some training.
So Richard's history, if he'd been in a less crowded area, he probably would have tortured and killed that superintendent.
Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, in that specific moment, you slapped my kid,
You deserve the roundhouse kick.
Yeah,
Well, that was the
that
cop,
was the cop. But you touch my child, you're gonna be there's gonna be some anger.
Yeah.
I do not know that I have it within me to ever win a fight. I've never won one yet, so it probably would go down badly. But there's gonna be some anger.
So over the next few years, Linda and Richard become estranged. But remember, what's his is his.
Mhm.
She's still his property. Even though he doesn't want her, he doesn't even like her.
Yeah.
She's his wife, which means she's his.
And those kids are his. Even doesn't spend any time with them or spend any part of their lives other than being the owner.
Right. So Richard got word from his brother, Joe, the one that he eventually cuts himself off from, that Linda had a boyfriend.
No, that's not good for that guy.
Well, Richard found out that Linda and this gentleman were meeting at a hotel. So he went to that hotel and he caught them in flagrante. He caught them naked, booties out everywhere.
See, I thought in flagrante was like a special word for the kitchen.
No. Richard beat up Linda's boyfriend, breaking almost every bone in his body, except for his left femur, except for the femur in his left leg. After that, he beat Linda.
So that's not hyperbole.
No.
That's medical.
Literally, he broke every bone in his body except his left femur.
Well, that's just leaving the job undone, evidently. I mean, if you go that far.
So after he beats the boyfriend, he beats Linda unconscious and he cut off both of her nipples to teach her a lesson. And then he left her. From then on, Richard had little to do with Linda, but would still see Junior and David. Linda's former flame left Jersey City and never returned. Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
He didn't do so running.
No, he left very slowly. So it was during this time, while working for Saul Goldfarb, the Saul Goldfarb trucking company, that he met Barbara Pedrucci. She was an accountant. Mr. Goldfarb had become taken with her while she actually was interviewing for a different job at a different company completely. So she's sitting in the lobby getting ready to interview, and he sees her and he like strikes up this conversation with her, and he tells her how much she looks like his daughter, and he offers her a job on the spot. So Barbara starts working for Mr. Goldfarb. Mm-hmm. So one day Barbara's at the vending machine and she encounters Richard. Richard, who had begun to compare most women to his mother. He just thought women were whores, like his mom and his estranged wife. He had actually caught his mother mid-transgression with the married neighbor. So you add that to all the women that were hitting on him in the bars, who were married or who had boyfriends. He thought of all women as whores. And then comes Barbara. To him, she was this beautiful, innocent, good girl. And he wanted her, and he was going to do whatever it took to get her. Barbara was 18 years old when they met. And after dating for a while, Barbara began to tell Richard that she felt smothered. She just felt smothered because he was always there. She was never even able to hang out with her friends anymore. She realized I'm in way over my head. So she told Richard, I want to see other people. I'm feeling smothered. I want to see other people. Barbara had no idea what she had gotten herself into. He responded by silently stabbing her in her back, just under her left shoulder.
Again, not metaphorically.
No. He told her that it was a warning and that she was his. And if he couldn't have her, no one else would. He threatened to kill her entire family. And when she began to argue, he grabbed her by her neck and choked her until she was unconscious.
After stabbing her. I mean, good on her for arguing after getting stabbed. I would be crying.
When she regained consciousness, he again warned her that he'd kill anyone who meant anything to her. So poor Barbara she's stuck.
Yeah, she really should have taken another accounting job.
So Barbara ends up getting pregnant. She fully thinks that was Richard's intention. He refused to wear any kind of protection, and she had no access to birth control. Well, Barbara is a devout Catholic, and it's the 60s, so abortion just was not an option for her.
Mm-hmm.
So Barbara fled Jersey City, and she went to Miami Beach to stay with her dad. So Barbara was a bit of a daddy's girl. Her mom and dad had separated or divorced. Her mom was not the friendliest of people, and so she goes to Miami Beach to stay with her dad. But her mom, after paying for Richard's divorce, because she wanted to protect the honor of her daughter.
Wait, so the mom paid for Richard's divorce?
Barbara comes from a very well-off family.
But still, that's weird.
So her daughter's pregnant. She wants Richard to marry her daughter. Richard, and he's laying it on thick. I love your daughter and I want to be with her, but I can't find this old bag that I'm married to. I'm still married, but I don't want to be married. And so she, to protect her daughter, quote unquote, more like to protect her and her family's honor, she pays for Richard's divorce. And then she tells Richard where Barbara is. Richard goes to Miami Beach and he brings Barbara home.
Kidnaps Barbara and drives her home, probably.
Yeah, it's not pretty. So Barbara and Richard are married in 1961 by a justice of the peace at City Hall in Miami.
How romantic. Was it,
Yeah. So before they got back to Jersey City, they got married. Years later, she said that was the worst day of my life. She said, now that I think of it, I should have thrown myself in the ocean and drowned rather than marry Richard. During that pregnancy, Richard, mad at Barbara, made her sit on a gray metal stool at night and threatened to murder her father if she moved. Now, this was still in Miami Beach. The temperature, surprisingly for us, because you think Miami Beach, you think it's always going to be warm, but the temperature dropped so low, and she sat there all night that it impacted her, and she lost the baby the next day. On October 15th of 1962, the couple moves back to Jersey City, and by the holidays, she's pregnant again. Surprise! Sadly, she miscarried again. The doctor told her that her muscles weren't strong enough to support a fetus. So Barbara, after some time, got pregnant a third time. The doctors ordered her to take it easy and gave her exercises to strengthen her muscles. Richard was there, and he was extremely attentive, and he wouldn't let her carry things, but he continued to hit her.
It's a logical inconsistency there, but okay.
The hitting and abuse became so common that he'd even do it in front of her mom and grandma. During an argument over a TV show, she commented on how someone on the Milton Berle show probably looked like a coworker that Richard had described to her often, like frequently. So all she's doing is having a conversation playing off of something he has said.
Yeah, right? That looks like Bob from work, as you've described him to me.
Right. This is what I imagine Bob would look like. Exactly.
Yeah.
Richard hit Barbara, broke her nose. He beat her so badly. Adam, he beat her so badly that it resulted in a partial birth of her son. When Barbara made it to the hospital, her baby boy's foot was literally hanging out of her body. She was 5 months pregnant at that time.
This is the third pregnancy.
In Anthony Bruno's book, The Story of the Cold-Blooded Killer, Barbara said that Richard tried to smother her with a pillow, pointed a gun at her, tried to run her over 3 different times. He hit her so hard that he broke her nose. And then, of course, she miscarried. When Barbara got pregnant the 4th time, Richard promised not to hit her.
Fourth time.
The fourth time. Yeah. He still slapped her around a bit, but he promised not to hit her. And she told him, Richard, listen to me carefully, real carefully. If God blesses us with a child and you hurt that child, hit that child, I swear I'll kill you. I'll cut your throat while you're sleeping. I'll poison your food. I'll kill you. Barbara was not having it anymore, at least when it came to her babies.
I was like, she should have done it because he hit her, but
right.
Should have been within her right.
So Richard and Barbara had 3 children that were born, 2 girls and a boy.
It's after the 3 miscarriages.
Mm-hmm. So Merrick was born in 1964, followed by Kristen and Dwayne. Barbara described Richard as alternating between good Richie and bad Richie. Good Richie was a hardworking and affectionate, a good provider, loving husband and father. An example of good Richie, Merrick, the oldest, became ill shortly after her birth, and Barbara said he could not have been more attentive. He even slept on Merrick's hospital room floor with just a pillow and a thin blanket. He lavished his family with gifts, Dior for Barbara, diamonds for the girls, expensive dinners, regular vacations, including trips to Disney. That's all good Richie. Bad Richie was prone to violent fits and domestic violence. Barbara called him the meanest bastard on the face of the earth. Though he was never physically harmful to the children, he was emotionally abusive.
He heard what she said.
He did hear what she said. Kind of. He never hit them. So, yeah, he took that to heart. He never physically touched them, but he was extremely emotionally abusive. Merrick recalled that he once killed her dog right in front of her to punish her for coming home late. So Barbara and the kids said that they never knew the extent of his activities. Barbara said she suspected that at least some of the income was from illegal activities, because they lived a really lavish lifestyle, and he always had large amounts of cash on him. But she adopted a don't ask questions policy.
Yeah, probably going to get you punched in the face. So why ask questions?
Right. So Richard claims that his very first crime was committed in 1949 when he was just 13 or 14 years old. He used a closet rod to beat a neighborhood boy named Charlie Lane, who had bullied and teased him. He then ran back to his apartment, leaving the boy behind. The young boy's body was found, but never linked by police to Richard. He later says in an interview that after killing Charlie, he stole a car, a dark blue Pontiac with the keys inside. He put Charlie in the trunk, drove the body to an area in South Jersey filled with desolate marshland and pine forests. He said once he was there, he knocked Charlie's teeth out with a hammer that he found in the trunk. Then he took his fingertips with an axe that he also found in the trunk. Then he dumped Charlie's lifeless body over the bridge. Then he got back in the car, drove back to Jersey, tossed the fingers in the night air as he drove, and then he ditched the car and went home. Forever different, he said. He said, I was no longer the shy, bullied boy. He felt powerful. He felt omnipotent. Richard has sometimes told different tales of his first kill. In his 1992 HBO special, he said it was a guy that he'd had an argument with in a bar. He said he beat him to death with a pool stick. So there is a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Uncertainty in his stories. Yeah. His second kill was an Irish cop named Doyle that gave Richard a hard time. He said he sat and he waited and he watched Doyle leave the bar and fall asleep in his car. He then poured gasoline into Doyle's car window and watched as Doyle's lit cigarette ignited the car, turning it into a fireball.
So not unlike he watched the cats in the furnace.
Mm-hmm. That was his preparation for that. In the 1960s, after marrying Barbara, Richard began working at a film lab in Manhattan. He had access to master copies of popular films and began making bootleg copies of Disney cartoons that he'd sold for profit. He soon discovered the lucrative business of pornography. He began copying and distributing tapes. Several of his known victims were men he'd met through video and drug trafficking. He also had a gang called the Coming Up Roses Gang. Coming Up Roses because it meant brighter things were ahead. They stole
a gang of positivity.
Right. They stole Corvettes and carried out burglaries. He was once arrested for passing a bad check, photographed and fingerprinted. The charges were ultimately dropped when he agreed to pay the money back. So Richard's victims, honestly, far too many to name. So we're going to discuss a few of the standouts, if you will.
The greatest hits.
Literally, yeah. Richard encounters Roy DeMeo. He's an associate and eventually a soldier connected to the Gambino family. Roy has a book about him called Murder Machine by Jerry Capicio and Gene Mustaine. So they encounter each other when Richard borrowed money from a loan shark. Richard missed a payment, so he was visited by Roy, who had a reputation of being a raging psychopath who killed for money and sport. Oh. He also worked as a butcher, as we learned from Catherine.
Do what you're good at, I guess.
He was very adept at cutting up people and disposing of them. Mm-hmm. He was also known for his 6 cuts: the head, the arms, the legs, and torso, which would all be disposed of in different locations. So Roy and 2 other men beat and pistol whipped Richard, leaving him with a prominent scar on his forehead. Richard ended up having to get 38 stitches that day.
Oh.
So Richard had a weapon on him at the time, but he didn't take it out. He played it cool because he realized that this was a connected guy and this could go really wrong for him. So he played it cool in getting his revenge because he didn't want the mafia retaliating by harming Barbara or the kids. Mm-hmm. So Richard settled his debt, and then he earned Roy DeMeo's trust and began working for him as an enforcer and debt collector. To prove himself to Roy asked Richard if he could kill. He said, "I hear you're as cold as ice and you do special work." And Roy had heard of Richard's work with the DeCavalcante family. Richard calmly walked up to a man who was just out walking his dog, someone picked out by Roy, shot him in the head without any change of expression, crossed back over across the street to Roy, proving his point. Roy offered him a job on the spot. Roy was killed on January 10th of 1983. He was last seen at a crew member's house. His partially frozen body was found in the trunk of his Cadillac. He'd been shot multiple times in the head and had a bullet wound in his hand. Now, there are several accounts of Roy's death. Most reports say he was killed by his own crew, but Richard takes the credit. Mm-hmm. A member of Roy's crew discredits Richard's account of his relationship with Roy and says he personally only saw Richard enter Roy's Gemini Lounge headquarters once to buy a handgun. So who do we believe? Stories contradicting. Here's the facts. Richard's a killer. Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of weird to have like all the bad guys trying to take credit for killing the one guy. But
right? Yeah.
I guess when you're a bad guy, you want to get as many marks on your resume as you can,
I guess. Next, we have Robert. Richard and Robert Prongay became acquainted in the early 1980s. Robert was a former Special Forces soldier who was passionate about killing people. Richard said in an interview that the 2 most dangerous men I ever met in my life were Roy DeMeo and Robert Prongay. Richard had a nickname for Robert. He called him Mr. Softy because he would drive an ice cream truck to be inconspicuous while watching his victims. Robert, along with being Special Forces, was also an explosives expert. He also knew tons about poison and taught Richard how to use cyanide as a weapon. Richard claims that he and Robert committed multiple murders together and that it was Robert's idea to freeze Louis Masgay to see if time of death could be disguised. We will talk about Louis in a little bit.
They were like early on CSI.
Yeah. So Robert and Richard had a falling out over a favor that Robert had asked of Richard. Robert wanted Richard to murder his ex-wife and 8-year-old son. Richard said no. Richard said that he never would kill a woman or a child. Beat him, smack him around, sure, but I'm not going to kill him. I got standards. You know what I'm saying?
Looks like we have some historical evidence that he probably killed a couple of kids because of miscarriages, but okay.
Right. Yeah, well, it doesn't count really, I guess, to him.
Yeah.
Richard said he was pissed to learn that Robert planned to poison with ricin a small reservoir that acted as drinking water for an upstate New York community just to kill one family. I mean, a killer's got to have a code, right?
Yeah. You don't kill a whole town, you kill the people.
So Robert, upset with Richard, threatened his family. No. You don't do that. So on August 10th of 1984, Robert was found dead in his Mr. Softy truck with 2 bullets in his chest. Richard says he fired 5 shots. Robert was set to appear in court on aggravated assault charges against his ex-wife and son. Later, investigators would say that Richard was a prime suspect in Robert's death, but he was never charged because he'd already been convicted for other murders by that time.
And they were like, hey, bad guy killed bad guy. Maybe it's not so bad.
On February 1st of 1980, Richard and a large boisterous business associate named George Maliband, aka Georgie Boy, were driving to New Jersey. During an argument about George repaying his debts to Roy DeMayo, George threatened Richard's family if he didn't help him. He said, big guy, I know too much about you and what you do. I don't think you'd let DeMayo hurt me. Fact is, I know you won't. Remember, big guy, I know where you live, where your family lives. You wouldn't let anything happen to me. Richard stopped the van abruptly without warning. He pulled out a .38 revolver and shot George in the chest 5 times. George's body was found several days later near the Chemetex chemical plant in Jersey City. It had been shoved into a 55-gallon drum and rolled to the bottom of a palisade, which is a stake wall. In order to get him into the barrel, Richard had to cut George's leg tendons. This will be the first official murder linked to Richard. He later would claim it was over business. George was reportedly carrying about $27,000 in cash at the time. It was George's brother that would connect George and Richard, and we'll get to that. Just keep that in mind. In 1982, Richard met 51-year-old Paul Hoffman, a pharmacist who was a regular at the store in Paterson, New Jersey. It was a storefront with a large back room where a variety of goods had fallen off a truck, could be bought. And so
I found this. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So Richard said that Paul was good. So Richard said that Paul made good money in his job, but he was greedy. Paul was looking to make a big profit by buying at low cost massive quantities of aspirin, barbiturates, diet pills, antibiotics, ulcer medicine, perfume, razor blades, anything he felt he could profit from, but especially Tagamet, which is an ulcer treatment that he could sell through his pharmacy. On April 29th of 1982, Paul showed up to the store. He said he had $25,000 in cash and wanted to purchase Tagamet. Richard took the money, and then he had Paul follow him to a warehouse where he was holding the drugs. Once there, he pointed Paul to some boxes that supposedly held the Tagamet. While Paul was looking for this Tagamet, Richard shot Paul in the neck. Unfortunately for Richard, his gun jammed and he couldn't get off a second shot. Paul fought Richard and temporarily gained control of the situation due to massive amounts of adrenaline pumping through his body, rapidly pumping through his body. Well, that was until Richard found a tire iron and beat him to death. Then he placed him inside a 55-gallon drum filled with instant cement. Then he left the barrel on the sidewalk of a motel behind a diner called Harry's Lunchette, where he'd stop for a roast beef sandwich after. He monitored the lunchette. Yeah, I mean, murder makes you hungry. It gives you an appetite.
Evidently, yeah. I mean, 55-gallon drug, that can't be like that light. So, and a human. worked up an appetite.
Yeah. So he monitored the lunchette period for a period of time to see if anyone was talking about discovering a body or the barrel itself. And then one day, after like a long period of time, the barrel was just gone. To this day, though, Paul's body has not been discovered, and Richard never knew what happened to that 55-gallon drum. So then, in the early 1980s, Richard's gang was under investigation for burglary. In December of 1982, a member of his gang, Percy House, was arrested. Percy later would agree to testify against Richard and was put into protective custody. Aside from Percy, warrants were issued for a couple more of Richard's gang members, Gary Smith and Daniel Deppner. Richard, of course, urged them to lie, and he even rented a room at the York Motel in North Bergen, New Jersey. Richard got upset when he got word that Gary had left the room to visit his daughter, and he also feared that Gary, who had talked about giving up the life and going straight, would turn against him and become an informant. So Richard, Percy, who was in jail, and Daniel all decided that Gary was a liability and had to be taken care of. Richard used one of his favorite methods to take Gary out. He gave him a hamburger laced with cyanide. Unfortunately for Gary, it took him longer than expected to die, so Richard made Daniel strangle Gary with a wire. According to forensic pathologist Michael Baden, if it hadn't been for the ligature mark, Richard probably would have gotten away with the murder if he had just been patient. If he had just sat and waited for the poison to kick in, he'd have gotten away with murder.
Again.
If he had let the cyanide work through Gary's system, his death would have most likely been attributed to something non-homicidal like a drug overdose. But the marks proved to investigators that there was foul play. When Barbara Deppner, Daniel's ex-wife, didn't come with a car, they placed Gary's body under the bed. Over the course of almost a week, the room was rented out 12 times. Obviously, couples using the room,
with the body under the bed.
With the body under the bed.
12 people that have bad senses of smell.
Well, they did report a foul odor in the room, but no one looked in between the mattress and the box spring. After the complaints didn't stop, the manager finally investigated, and Gary's body was found on December 27th of 1982. And this, dear desktop detectives, is where we stop for this week. Oh, because there's so much more. There's so much more. This is not the end of the Iceman.
So we got about 40 minutes in before you mentioned the first murder that he was actually going to be charged with.
I told you there is so much there. These are just the greatest hits, as we said.
Yeah.
So that is this week's, for now, B-side.
To be continued.
To be continued.
This is Kevin Armstrong, your host for Movie Battle. Each episode, we take two films and put a superfan of each against one another to decide which one is best. The only rule we have is that you come correct. If you're interested in being a guest on Movie Battle, please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
It's now time for the A-side, and we just heard a lot about a very prolific gentleman. In fact, so prolific that we're not going to be able to talk about all of the stuff he's done in one episode, which is kind of flabbergasting.
Right?
He's scary. For the A-side this week, I didn't want to talk about anybody scary. It was actually born out of a conversation that I had with my eldest yesterday. After an hour of driver's training, which meant they drove and I was in the passenger seat, My watch at one point registered elevated heart rates for 20 consecutive minutes. But they did a great job. They really did. And it was a really great day. We've got another day tomorrow for practicing driving. I was super impressed. For an hour, like, we drove all over the place. I had a route planned out, but they were doing so well that I expanded the route and we just kept driving, and it was great. And we sat down at lunch and started to talk, which was probably my favorite part of the day. Not only did we get to practice some driving, but we got to just, the two of us, have lunch. And we were talking about the most recent political events. And one of those major things is we have a new president. It was sworn in, like a week ago now. And we started talking about kind of the role of the president, especially as it comes to the pandemic, as my oldest is going back to school next week, at least in some form. It's going to be a hybrid form.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest still is doing completely distance learning, and how presidents can really impact things. And I started thinking about how, if I was writing the script, if 2021 was a movie and we were able to ramp up all the vaccinations and start to get things open, how cool would it be to have everything kind of culminate with a big speech on Independence Day, declaring our independence from COVID-19? That we've got to this point, we've got people vaccinated, we're coming at it. Like, I was like, if this is a movie or a TV show, that's exactly what would happen. Like, so you got to set it up this way. And of course, as often does, that sent me down a internet black hole of thinking about, oh, wow, of course that makes sense to Adam, because one of your favorite movies as a kid has an epic scene where the president on Independence Day says, "We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. Today, the world will declare their Independence Day." I'm paraphrasing, but from Independence Day, the movie from 1996, which is still one of my all-time favorites, and the President Thomas J. Whitmore, is played by Bill Pullman, who is in every other movie that Bill Putman wasn't in
right, or Paxton.
Paxton, yeah. I don't know who Bill Putman is, but he was evidently in a lot of movies too. According to Adam's brain. Bill Paxton, Bill Pullman. Bill Putman is the strange conglomeration of the two. And I said, okay, now that's exactly what I want to talk about for the A-side this week. The best fictional presidents. And so I dove into it, and I found a very uncomfortable truth. Most presidents, when it comes to media, there's not a lot of good ones. Like, they're always
fictional ones?
Like the fictional presidents, yeah. Like, they're always the ones who are behind the assassination attempt, or they're secretly trying to create a war, or they're hanging out there, spies to die, or they are, like in Dr. Strangelove, inept and ending up with, nuclear war, or somebody like, the West Wing was great because it had Josiah Bartlett, but everybody after him was kind of not so good. So I tried to make a top 10 list of the best fictional presidents, and the problem was that best word, because most of them, there's a lot of really bad presidents in fiction. Mm-hmm. So it was hard for me to say, like, okay, I'm going to find the top 10 best. So I just had to go with the top 10 most memorable / my favorite presidents in fiction. And even then, I barely got to 10, because there are a lot of really bad presidents. And Brooke, I know one of your favorite shows, if I remember correctly, you were a big Scandal fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like Fitzgerald Grant III was all that great.
I mean, I can't really defend him.
Yeah, there's really no defending him. I mean, you've got somebody like Kevin James in the movie Pixels, which not many people remember that, but aliens decided to invade the country or the world using video games. It was Adam Sandler, Kevin James movie. Somehow Kevin James is the president in that movie. And that might be the most unbelievable thing of the movie. And
right? And it's got aliens.
And it's got aliens that literally play a game of Pac-Man. And somehow Peter Dinklage is like this crazy, badass, mean dude.
I love Peter Dinklage.
He's so great. I just don't like it. Seems so weird to see him be mean and bad. Let's say like in Sharknado 3, which was subtitled "Oh Hell No." Evidently, the president of the country is played by Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks.
That's why it was subtitled "Oh Hell No."
Oh Hell No! Yeah, it wasn't about the Sharks anymore. I remember being very excited for this movie, and there's a weird like subtext here. Like the 1990s, specifically like 93 through 98, there were a lot of president movies.
You know what? You're right. There really were.
I don't understand how that happened or why it happened, but there were a lot of movies about presidents. One of which, not specifically about presidents, but Mars Attacks, which I was super excited for because I thought it was going to be like an action movie, and it really just turned into like a dark comedy where Michael J. Fox had to end up on a chihuahua, which I was very confused about. The president in that movie is played by Jack Nicholson, who basically does nothing unless the entire country or world get invaded.
Yeah.
We've got the president from Murder at 1600, which another mid-90s movie, which starred Wesley Snipes as a police officer who's investigating a murder at the White House. It turns out that somehow the president's involved. That was played by Ronnie Cox, who's another one of those guys. He definitely is that guy from that show, because you see him and you're like, that guy's been in everything. Then you're like, but I have no idea what his name is.
Now, was this pre-prison Wesley?
Yes, 1997. So this is like Wesley at the height, like this post Demolition Man. Like this is leading man Wesley in action movies.
Okay.
So this was like a legit movie. Didn't make any money, but it tried. Then we've got also in the mid 90s, President Andrew Shepard, which was Michael Douglas in The American President, which is evidently just a dating movie involving the president. But he seemed
the president needs love too.
Yeah, he seemed like a decent guy. Like, I mean, we liked him, which was very strange because Michael Douglas can come off really slimy, but he didn't in that movie, and that was okay. We've got Dave, which played by Kevin Kline in the movie Dave, which was 1993. Another presidential movie from the 90s, which I do not understand why there were so many. He seemed like a decent dude. The guy who actually was president, the guy who replaced him, was a complete buffoon, but still survived. We also had in 2003, which is just outside of my peak presidential movies window, Chris Rock in Head of State.
I don't remember that one.
Oh, yeah. Chris Rock gets elected president.
Is it a comedy?
It's definitely a comedy. But it's kind of like a update of Distinguished Gentleman with Eddie Murphy, where like this guy ends up becoming the president on accident, kind of. Distinguished Gentleman was the great, brilliant idea that I have the same name as the guy who used to be the senator and he just died. So I'll run on the same with just using my name, and people will just vote for me because it was the last guy they voted for anyway, which is hilarious because it could totally work.
Oh, I could totally see it happening right now.
One of my favorite presidents who was very bad at being president was President Dwayne Alonzo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho from the movie Idiocracy.
Can we just say that movie seems so much closer to reality than I ever thought possible.
Everybody jumps on The Simpsons and they're like, oh, The Simpsons predicted the future. I'm like, oh, guys, Idiocracy predicted the future. Like, Gatorade, it's got what plants crave, electrolytes. Does not sound like that crazy an idea. And Terry Crews is amazing. He's so much fun. And he does such a great job in that movie as President Dwayne Alonzo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho. that he cannot be considered a best president because he was very bad at his job. So I really narrowed it down to 3. I got 3 presidents from movies that I absolutely think would be great presidents as president. Maybe actually I'll go with 4.
Okay.
Because I was on the fence with number 4, but I'm gonna allow it. They are great presidents within the movies they are in, and I think they could actually do the job if these characters became actual people. So number 4, the one that I was on the fence about because it's a really hard job to be president. It's also even harder when there's a giant meteor headed towards Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1998, which again, 90s were the king of president movies, Morgan Freeman played the president in Deep Impact.
Wait a minute. You had to debate over Morgan Freeman?
I know he only got in because he doesn't do a great job in the movie, but also like he doesn't have a lot to do. Evidently, he didn't know that you could just send miners into space and they would blow up the asteroid. That's what happened in the other movie from 1998 about asteroids. Mm-hmm. So I was holding it against him a little bit, but I'm like, okay, it's fine. You guys don't have oil rig guys in this reality, so I'll let you slide. But he definitely, and he's the only one who's on this list twice because he also played the president in the third. So it was first we had Olympus Has Fallen, then we had London Has Fallen, and then it was Angel Has Fallen. Mm-hmm. You know, and he played so the third of the trilogy, he's the president. The first 2, he's like the Secretary of State or the Vice President.
Right.
By the third, he's the president. So he's actually played the president twice, which is kind of impressive because nobody else in this list has played the president twice. So that gave him the spot because he did twice, and he's Morgan Freeman, and I'd really like him to narrate all my actions.
Right.
Number 3 is President James Marshall, played by Harrison Ford in the exceptionally fun 90s action film Air Force One. He also gets to drop one of those great 90s action movie moments when he like kicks the bad guy off the plane and he shoots him, spoiler alert, shoots him out like the cargo lift and he goes, "Get the hell off my plane." Just a great line. I believe that Harrison Ford would be a great president, or especially this version of Harrison Ford would be a great president. He probably would just never take the job because, I mean, it took us 30 years to get him to do a Star Wars movie again. Number 2 is President J. Thomas Whitmore, which I mentioned before, Bill Pullman from 1996's Independence Day, and he reprised his role in 2016 in a movie that no one admits happened, which was Independence Day Resurgence.
It didn't happen. We don't speak of it.
I mean, if you can't get Will Smith to come back, he came back for 2 Men in Black movies. And you can't get him to come back for an Independence Day movie, that's a bad script. So let's just pretend that didn't happen. However, that was one of the defining movie moments of my 8th grade, 9th grade year. The transition between 9th grade and 10th grade is when that movie came out that summer. It was a big deal. Absolutely love it. And my favorite of all fictional presidents.
Wait, we should mention, wasn't it the start of the summer blockbuster?
It was, I don't know if it was the start because Jurassic Park had already come out 2 years earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it definitely became it was the start of the Will Smith on July 4th blockbusters.
Right. Okay.
Because then he started having them every year there was a Will Smith movie coming out on July 4th, and then Wild Wild West happened, and now we don't talk about that anymore.
Who also, by the way, has Kevin Kline.
Yeah, no, Kevin Kline he's very president. Good. But that movie is very bad, and kind of the amount of talent in that movie. You got Selma Hayek, you got Kevin Kline, you got Will Smith, you've got Kenneth Branagh. I mean, a lot of talent, and somehow they wasted every single bit of it. It's amazing. So my favorite movie president, and who I think could actually do the job, and also I really love the movie, was President James Sawyer, from a highly underrated movie from 2013, starring Jamie Foxx and Channing Tatum, called White House Down.
Oh yeah.
So good. And like the whole thing, like we know that he's just playing Obama. Like the character is written just to be Obama. And he pulls it off somehow. He makes it his own. There's one point when like he's escaping the White House, so he grabs his Air Force Ones and then he tries to fire a gun, but he's never fired a gun before. He's so good and he is very believable. And he actually gets the whole part of dealing with like humanity, where most of these characters never get to actually deal with the public. His whole interaction with the daughter of the main character, Channing Tatum, is a guy applying for the Secret Service. His daughter's on tour. She gets kidnapped, but before that, she's interviewing him for her YouTube channel. And it is the most authentic and believable moment, probably of the movie. But also makes me think that the way he handles himself in that moment, as well as the rest of the movie, he would actually be a pretty good president. So my favorite fictional president from movies, because obviously we can't do TV shows because it would just be Josiah Bartlet because he has so many great quotes, is James Sawyer from White House Down, 2013, Channing Tatum. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's the better of the two movies that came out in 2013 about the president being abducted, which that's also weird. Why did that happen right after 2012? Wonder what happened there. So, highly recommend it. James Sawyer, best fictional president. Morgan Freeman gets in the top 4 just because he's done it twice, even though he let, the entire world almost get hit by an asteroid because he didn't use any miners to fly into space.
He learned his lesson. That's why he came back as president.
Yeah, I guess he was like, I'm going to do this better the second time, because had I only known that I could have got some animal crackers, some Ben Affleck, and some Bruce Willis and taken care of this whole asteroid thing earlier, it would have been way easier. Might have saved us from that Aerosmith song.
Wow. So your goal was to be much happier this week, and you were.
Yeah, no, I was like, I'm gonna positive this week. And then we started your thing, and I'm like, thank God I'm being positive this week. Because I'm gonna need to call somebody after this.
Seriously, I feel like mine is a movie. Like it's not real, but it is.
No, it's not a movie. It's a mini series. Like I said, we got 40 minutes in. This guy had murdered 2 to 3 of his children in miscarriages, killed a couple other people, depending on how many people you talk to, and then it was like, oh, and this one he was finally charged for.
Yeah.
And I want to be like, I'm like, wow, where about the other ones?
We'll find out more next week. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Same bad time, same bad channel.
Nah, I feel like we're at least like 17 murders in before he finally was like, hey, we should charge this guy with something. Not saying the police were sleeping, but
well, we saw what happened to the sleeping police, so
yeah, no, that's true. That's kind of, and also that's like Joker evil, like to dump the gasoline in the car and wait for his own cigar to light it, or cigarette. That is that's some comic book evil stuff right there.
Like legit, you feel like they should be sending him off to Arkham Asylum because you're just like, what? Yeah.
Also, can we talk about how bad an idea that is to have an asylum where you keep all the bad people in one specific spot? Can we not take the crazy people and spread them out? Like, why are we going to put them all in one spot? Like, hey, you guys are all like maniacal killers. Why don't you have lunch together?
Why don't you team up and see what you can do?
Yeah. You guys want to hit the weight room? See, talk a little bit. Maybe you can work together in the library. It'll be great. Horrible idea.
Oh, all right. So is that the A side?
That's the A side. Yeah. James Sawyer for president.
2024?
Yeah, I'll take it. 2028. At this point, if Jamie Foxx runs, I'm voting. Be like, whatever.
Oh, man.
He could do it.
All right. Before we get out of here, got to say thanks again for supporting the show and following us and taking the journey with us, because we always have a good time. Well, I always have a good time. I freak Adam out each week. So win-win for me.
It's good. It's like, it just makes sure that the heart rate monitor on my watch is still working. Cool. Like, oh, look, my pulse is racing. Cool. My watch still works.
If you would like to support the show, you can do that in several ways. You can buy us a coffee. It's buymeacoffee.com/A-side-B-side-pod. Thanks again to your friend Janice, who became a member on Buy Me a Coffee. You can do that. You can buy us just a couple of cups if you like.
And I would be remiss to not point out that I did mention coming in second in the geography bee in grade school, and Janice beat me.
Also, you can head on over to our website and get some merch. I should mention that all of the proceeds from Buy Me a Coffee are used in production and promotion for the show, including actual coffee, because you don't have to edit.
And Brooke's got to like psych herself up. She's like, I got to talk to Adam for 2 hours. Okay, here we go. Hit me with that espresso.
You can also head on over to our website. It's asidebsidepodcast.square.site. You can grab yourself some merch. We've got brand new tees. Janice actually grabbed a tee too. Bad vibes save lives, because listen to that gut. Oh, speaking of guts, trust your gut. They're probably nuts is another one. So you can grab those as well as some other merch. We have face masks and blankets and puzzles all on our website. You can check that out. And that's another great way to support us. Also, feel free to give us a rating on Apple. You can just drop a star, hopefully more than one, or you can actually leave a review. You can rate or review the show as well, and that helps push the show up in numbers on Apple Podcast as well.
We will only accept up to 5 stars. You cannot give us any more. That's not allowed.
You might want to, but stop. Don't.
Yeah, that's Apple's just keeping your star rating down. It's not us. It's Apple. Also, Apple, we love you.
Oh, well, again, this is the first time we've ever done a 2-parter. So that means next week we'll finish it and wrap it up, and we'll find out what happens to Richard Kuklinski and what wrestler started me down this rabbit hole researching this insane man. We'll find that out next week.
I can't wait.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Brooke.
As always, thank you for listening to A-Side, B-Side Podcast. If you enjoy the show, please, if you don't mind, head on over to Apple and leave us a rating or a review. And if you'd like to continue to support the podcast, you can do so by heading on over to Patreon, or you can buy us a coffee, as well as buying merch on our website, asidebsidepodcast.square.site. From Adam and I at A-Side, B-Side Podcast, please remember to wear your mask, social distance if you're around people that don't live in your household, and just be safe and happy. Thanks again from us here at A-Side, B-Side Podcast.